Okay, welcome back, everyone. Thank you, as always, for listening and watching. Today, we have another super exciting chat with a real person. Today, we're chatting with real persons, Ali and Alison. Hello.
Hello.
How you two doing?
We're doing good. Really good. We're excited for the interview.
Yeah.
As am I. Thank you for doing this. Should be a fun time. So just to clarify for those watching, who's Ali, who's Alison?
I'm Ali.
And I'm Alison.
Yeah.
Hello, hello.
Hello.
All right. Before we get rolling, I just wanted you to know the adjective for metal is metallic, but not so for iron, which is ironic. Right?
Right.
Yeah. And I tried to come up with the carpentry pun that would work. I think I nailed it, but nobody saw it. No?
Well, I don't know if you know this, Andy, but there's a real reason why the dinosaur crossed the road. Do you know what it is?
I don't. Why?
It's because the chicken had not evolved yet.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, right. It's all uphill from here. So yes, thank you. All right. So yeah, with that out of the way, thank you very much. What state do you live in? We'll jump right into it. Now, this might be an interesting answer here.
It is. Ooh, the train. We have actually moved around a lot since we retired. We were in Seattle when we were working. We sold the condo and moved, and we started traveling full time. So we were living wherever we were. And
that was back in 2018.
And then there was the COVID. The COVID thing got so out of control. So we hunkered down for 4 months in Arizona with Allison's mom to keep her safe and ourselves. And then we just fell in love with it and bought a house and moved in early 2021. We had 3 winters there and hated that. So we moved again recently, and now we're very settled in the Prescott area in Arizona for the long term.
Sorry, what about the Arizona winter did you not like?
Well, we were in Flagstaff, which is 7,000 feet, and winters. And the last winter that we were there, we had 7 feet of snow that stayed for months on end.
Wow.
It wasn't gone until May 1st. And we were like, that is it for that. We had 2 winters with 3 feet of snow until April 1st. And the third one was like, that's all.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's a good point to keep in mind. There are some higher elevation spots in Arizona. Most people think just Phoenix and the surrounding areas, which are comparatively lovely in the winter. But okay, that answers. And Prescott's still fairly north relative to Phoenix, right?
About an hour and a half north.
Yeah, and it's 40. We're at 4,700 feet, so that keeps us out of the worst of the heat.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, my mom lives there, and she just sent me a text. I'm recording this early June, and it's a heat wave now with multiple days in a row over 110 already.
Yeah, we're having a 100-degree day today here in the Prescott area.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a beacon of things to come, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
What is your retirement status?
We have been retired for working on 7 years now. So we both retired in 2018.
Okay, good. And where did you work? Like prior to stopping the work thing, what type of work was it and where?
I was in marketing for a big architecture and engineering company for most of my career.
And I worked for a really small, privately held graphic arts company that worked a lot on the digital files that went to the printer for all of your lovely catalogs that you used to get in the mail.
Oh, okay. And I'm sorry, you weren't in Arizona while you were still working, right? You retired?
No, we were in Seattle.
We were in downtown Seattle.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Lovely place. I went there last year for the first time to the Pacific Northwest and spent a few days in Oregon and a few days in Washington, one of which was in Seattle. Maybe we got lucky. I always thought it was always like gloomy and gray and drizzling, but it was beautiful, 70-degree, crisp, clear weather.
You got lucky.
You got lucky. There's a term. The term is January for when, you're just so tired of the gloom and it's still so gloomy. January. That tells you something.
Okay. Yeah. We went, it was July or August, maybe. It was perfect. So good to know I lucked out. So now that you're in retirement, you've been doing this a while. Sounds like 7 years, 6 years, 6 or 7 years. what are any particular goals financially, non-financially, that you've had so far that you still have going forward?
Yeah, for me, the biggest goal is, of course, not to run out of money. And I'm going to give you all the financial answers. She's going to give you all the fluffy answers, which are important as well. We want to create a tax efficient withdrawal strategy every year. And since we retired, I don't think each year has been the same as the last. We've always made little tweaks. With the more we learn, the more we adjust. And then all of a sudden we go from being full-time travelers to having a home base, a full home. So, it's plane tickets, or it's, talking about remodeling the kitchen. So there's that. And we also want to make sure that in our older years that we're taken care of and our nieces and nephews don't have to step in, because we don't have kids.
Okay.
Yeah. And also, it's really important to us that we are always looking at how to set aside enough money every year to make other people's lives a little easier. Yeah. And I have a not fluffy answer as well, which is it's really important for me to be doing Roth conversions every year, because my career earnings live in one IRA, and we retired when I was 44. So we got to keep doing those Roth conversions every year as much as we can.
Yeah. Now, when you say to leave or to make other people's lives easier, are you gifting money now, or you just mean you're putting it in Roth so when people do eventually get it, it's tax-free to them, or both?
We do a lot of giving. Okay. And
this year we started a DAF, and we're making larger contributions to that. We have been over the years doing general giving, but we're doing larger giving now. And, we want to do more stuff with our nieces and nephews. We show up for more things now. So.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. And we can't give all through the DAF. It has its restrictions, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
Of course, but that's a good tool.
Yep.
Yeah. I realized I forgot to ask, if you don't mind sharing, what are your ages? You said, so you were 44 and you retired, Ali, which I can kind of do the math now, but.
So right 50. Now, yeah, she just turned 50 last month, and I'm 60, going to be 61 this year.
Okay. And I asked not because I have some weird curiosity, but for people listening, like, for example, with qualified charitable distributions, that comes into play for people who.
Yep.
Okay, so.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned, Alison, travel. You went from a life of travel to having a home base. Can you touch on that some more?
Well,
sure.
See, so travel, like, we had this map up in our condo in Seattle, and we dragged it around. We didn't take it traveling with us, but we kept it when we stored a few things. And we traveled from October of 2018 until really January of 2021.
Yep.
And we really struggled with, should we start with Southeast Asia? Where should we start? We started in Southeast Asia and just kept moving around through Southeast Asia, and then Japan, and then we went to Europe, and then, that sort of thing. Yeah. We kept going from place to place and just tried to live where we were.
Yeah.
I would have to say it's very true that in the very beginning, one of the inspiring, we love travel, but there certainly is lots of talk about travel and retirement, and the idea of spending as little as you can.
Geoarbitraging.
But that did not work for us for lots of reasons. So instead, it was more about just this lifestyle of living as a guest in other people's communities and countries, and just, being humble and learning and enjoying and appreciating all these new places and that sort of thing.
We also incorporated pet sitting as kind of a work swap for housing. And we did that all over the world as well. Southeast Asia, Central America, Europe. And initially the goal was to spend as little as we could on our budget and be pretty frugal. But over time, we kind of evolved our thinking on that, evolved not wanting to spend any money on taxes to now, maybe spending a little bit more now is going to help us in the long run. Maybe a little bit bigger Roth conversion now. So we've really evolved our stance on that.
Yeah.
Cool. So there's a few things I want to dig into because your sort of story is unique with so much travel, which I'm sure a lot of people listening is right up their alley. So maybe let's just start with geoarbitrage. I heard you say. Can you explain what that means, please?
So the whole idea in that regard is to target countries that are, low cost. So your housing is really low, your food budgets are really low, your travel expenses are really low. You don't have a house to maintain. I mean, we sold our house. We didn't have a home base. Okay. So it's targeting typically the Southern and Central America countries, Southeast Asia, Vietnam.
And balancing that with the more expensive places,
right?
So you're also going to.
Well, for instance, the first summer that we did this, we took my mom to France for 3 months. Wow! And that was expensive
and
amazing, but we were able to pull it off because we had really been frugal the first half of the year and done a lot of pet sitting, so no housing costs there at all.
There are challenges, I think, associated with the concept of geo-arbitrage if you look at it generically. And we were noticing that because we met wonderful people everywhere, local people and travelers as well. And we kept noticing this thinking that is about extreme frugality and geo-arbitrage. And we were noticing that people were setting themselves up in these lower cost of living countries, in gated communities, separate from the local communities, and what impact that has on the local economies and culture. And so there are problems to pay attention to if you're trying to be a thoughtful traveler.
The whole idea of geo-arbitrage really soured itself for us.
Yeah.
Good to know. Okay.
So, but we just love to travel.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you were all in. That was going to be one of my questions. What did you do with the house here? So you said you sold it. So you had no base or... So
we had a condo in Seattle, and we sold that and put half of it in the market and half of it in a money market account. Okay. Because I said, if we have another housing dip, we're going to come back and buy a house real quick.
It was realistic to assume that someday we would want a home base again, and we did.
So we set ourselves up with a traveling mailbox, and then for taxes, we had a friend who let us use their home address for taxes in Washington. Okay. Yeah.
Got it. So for those interested, so you didn't try to get rid of your U.S. citizenship. You didn't say you weren't a U.S. citizen for tax purposes.
No.
Got it. So you still filed the U.S. tax return. Now, how does it work internationally? I don't know where to start. Between visas, and did you have any income in other countries where there was a risk of them claiming you had to pay taxes there as well?
No, we didn't. We did the house sitting didn't generate any income. We did it in exchange for housing.
Okay.
None of our investments, we're all in low-cost ETFs that are all U.S. based.
Yeah.
So we weren't earning any income at all.
We were living off of our brokerage account.
We were.
Yeah. So we were not earning income, and we were just filing taxes and voting in Washington State, just like normal.
Okay.
The one thing that we did have to do is we got ourselves traveling health insurance.
That was actually awesome. And that came with a funny benefit, which was we were required to be out of the United States for a minimum of 6 months in the calendar year.
Yeah.
And that was fun. That made it really interesting, and travel planning and scheduling and moving from place to place and the balancing act of the dollars involved.
Yeah.
It was a very fun way to keep ourselves busy and entertained, and we loved it.
So while you were doing these few years of travel, were you already easily out of the country for 6 months, or you did have to consciously make sure you were booking stuff?
It was easy.
It was really easy. When COVID happened, we came back for longer than we had anticipated. So at the end of 2020, the summer of 2020, we still were on our international healthcare plan, and it did cover us up to 6 months in the US. So we had to leave. We could have had a qualifying event and got on the ACA right then, but we said, no, let's go. So we went and spent 3 months on the Isle of Wight in the south of England, And our friends who we had met in Chiang Mai, Thailand, live there. So they came, and while we were doing our 2 weeks of quarantine, they went shopping for us. And then we hung out with them on and off for the next 3 months while we waited for the first of the year to roll around and get on the ACA.
It was really nice to be in a little community where they had a lot of rules, and we had friends who lived there. So we felt like we were in bounds with respecting the local rules and the local community. But we just, so I was not feeling ready to 100% stop traveling. So that felt like we bought a house and then left. And then we didn't move in until 3 months later when we came back in January 2021.
Yeah.
So you bought a house in Arizona, you mean, during 2021?
Yeah. So in 2020, I was working on convincing Allison that this is it. We've been doing this for a few years. We found a balance between, we're not trying to move constantly. We're trying to be grounded. And we were negotiating, okay, we're going to start doing like a 3 month at a time location, and then a month back in the USA with her mom and other family. So we had been working on this plan, and then COVID became a huge thing. We had been in Mexico for 4 months. So we had a plan to come back on like May 5th to pick up her mom and go to Ireland for, a month and a half.
Yeah.
And keep traveling with her for the summer. But, COVID, and we were worried about her. So we came back. We moved into Allison's sister-in-law's home, their rental, her sister and brother-in-law in Flagstaff. And we just quarantined for 3 weeks, picked up her mom. And the thing of just living back with family for that duration.
It was really nice.
It just hit us. It hit her first. Like, we need to be here. It's time to, we can still travel when we need to, when we want to, but it's time to get a house again. So.
Yeah. And the additional interesting scenario is we have a dear old friend that we know from Seattle, and he's 7 years older than me. So he was going to be retiring pretty soon. And he's by himself. He doesn't really have any family left. And right at the end of 2019, we said to him, hey, are you really serious about setting up this kind of co-living situation? And he said back then, yeah, I am. So through COVID, that happened. And we said, okay, to our housemate, are you ready? You want to do this now? He said, sure. So that's one of the other reasons to buy the house. So we bought the house in Flagstaff. He moved out. And,
have you ever made a joke with really close friends or a close family member? We should set up a compound. And it was that joke. We had that joke going with him for years. So we just said, how about if it's not a joke?
Yeah.
How about if we really do this thing?
Cool.
So we're spending lots of time with him, lots of time with my mom. And now we've got a house that was built in 1973 and never been updated. So we're working a lot on our house right now.
2-story duplex so we share and we are totally separate, but the sharing is real.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you foresee this arrangement lasting for a while? Is it working?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
For as long as he's around.
The reason to say yes, the reason for him to say yes was to not ever have to move again, which we did have to move out of Flagstaff as soon as we got that set up. But the idea is this is a lifetime commitment, and we opened a trust so that this house will stay his home for the rest of his life, even if we should, get kidnapped by aliens or something like that.
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah. It's always possible.
Right. Oh, interesting. So he was okay. He was from Seattle as well, you said, right? And he was okay moving to Arizona to do this?
Well, he had left Seattle at some point for a variety of reasons and had gone back to where he grew up in Arkansas.
For lower cost of living.
Lower cost of living particularly. But he was ready to retire, and we had already just retired. So it all kind of just came together, perfect timing.
That was the bonus of COVID, was reclaiming this idea and turning it into a reality for all of us.
Yeah.
Right. So what are your travel plans now? I know you obviously love to travel. I assume scaled it back. You're not living abroad per se. Just kind of loosely, how many weeks, months out of the year are you away at this point?
It's really interesting because when we were doing it full time, we realized pretty quickly that a month in a place was kind of a minimum for us.
Yep.
Because we don't want to feel like we're running all the time and never grounded. So that was the thinking for a while, a month minimum. And so we at this point noticed when we just traveled for 10 days, like a week and 10 days, that feels good because we start wanting to know how Allison's mom is doing. We start wondering
how's our
how the
housemate
house is doing, so we have that pull back to being here.
Right.
So it feels like 2 weeks is probably what we're comfortable with as a max because we don't want it to be hard to be.
Yeah, I can see all told maybe in a year being gone for a month.
Okay.
We have a nephew that's graduated college recently, and his mom's planning a big graduation trip for him in France. And we said, well, we'd love to drop in on that trip. So right now we're talking about maybe going to France for a couple of weeks in September.
The X factor is if we can trick Allison's mom into going with us. And we did travel for 2 months last year with her.
Yep.
But she's 85. So
she's announced she's done with that.
Yeah. I might try again, but I think she's done.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can take her back for the Olympics and then just stay there and go to the graduation in September. Yeah. Okay. Very interesting. I'm sure we'll circle back to some of the travel related stuff throughout the course of the rest of these questions here. But so stepping back, kind of broader retirement planning thoughts and so forth. When did one or both of you start getting serious about planning for the idea of whatever it was your retirement was going to look like?
Yeah. So Ali and I met in 2004 up in Seattle. And pretty quickly as our relationship developed, we started talking about retirement stuff because we were both kind of inclined to think that's important. And with us being 10 years apart, we also wanted to make sure that we set up our retirement, whatever it was going to be, to be early enough so I was not too old yet and she could still enjoy me not being old.
I announced that it was for sure early retirement because we're going to retire at the same time. And I'm not 20 years younger. I'm 10 years younger. So I thought from the beginning, there's a term early retirement that we're working on.
Yeah. So right away, we started doing things like talking about what's going on with our 401ks. We also talked about working together on demystifying what seemed really scary about investing in markets. So we made the commitment pretty early on that we would work on demystifying it. And we joined an all women's investment club in Seattle, which was great. And we started taking little classes here and there that were becoming available.
We were having such a good time learning about it, investing and growing our confidence. And, that shifted into all kinds of personal finance and all that sort of thing. But it was basically a conscious decision. We met, we became friends, then we started dating. And when we started dating, we said, kids, we have to be on it. We have to be in agreement. Pets, we have to be in agreement. Owning or renting, we have to be in agreement.
In investing for
money,
retirement,
we have to be in agreement. So we just said from the beginning, we're going to work on these things together.
Yeah. And
we made money and investing and retirement our project
it's kind
from
of
the
hobby.
beginning of our relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. All the things you just mentioned, those are really huge stones in all relationships that you really have to be on the same page. If not, it's only so much you can give and take when it comes to major impactful decisions like that. So,
right.
Yeah.
Now, did either of you have much, if any, exposure to finances, investing, et cetera, before this journey started, or not really?
Not really.
I had a little bit. My dad was a CPA, so you would think that he was on it, but he had his own insecurities about investing, and my parents had invested in some commercial real estate with a friend a long time ago, but they didn't really talk about it. They didn't share that information with us, and my grandparents, they were living off their investments, but nobody talked about it. So that was, I think, a detriment for us. And that's one of the reasons why when we got together and we were talking about it, we realized that, well, we've got somebody to work on this project with. And that helped a lot.
So Allison had the taboo money thing where you're not allowed to talk about it. And for me, it just was, we didn't have any money. I didn't really have the parents doing parenting jobs, but my grandparents were all very low income earners. My grandmothers were the big teachers of money things to me. And one of them was an assistant librarian who taught herself how to invest in individual stocks. So she taught me that, which was amazing. But I also learned kind of that living with debt is just normal and possibly the only option. So it took me a long time to unlearn that and to get myself out of student loan debt and all of that. So we were kind of poised with these background stories when we met and just said, we gotta move past that together.
Right.
Yeah.
So in addition to, you said you took some courses in like a women's investing group, what other things, I mean, this sort of predates YouTube, I guess, if it was 2004, but where did you go to try to find out more? Was it just sort of public groups and whatever?
Well, I mean,
got involved in Better Investing.
Yeah, there's an organization called Better Investing, and they have a whole framework on how to research stocks. And through the investment club that we were in, like every month, everybody got a new stock or picked a new stock to come and pitch to the group, and then you would decide whether or not you were going to invest in it. So we started finding a lot of resources that started to become more and more online through the libraries, like Value Line and Morningstar. So that
sounds like a long time.
I know, it was ancient.
Right.
So, I mean, it just kind of snowballed from there in the sense that more and more stuff start to come online. And
we also, we would attend weird money related dinners from different, we're not and are not interested in advisory firms, but we used to attend some weird advisor dinner things and learn and also say, no, not for us. No, not
my parents had an advisor, and when my dad couldn't go anymore, he'd say, well, do you want to go? And I'd say, well, sure, let's go.
We want to learn from anyone and everyone.
And it helped us kind of say, well, that's not the direction we want to go eventually.
Right.
So
great.
It's great though to learn in any way that you can learn.
Yep.
And get a free chicken dinner out of it too.
That's
exactly.
Right.
Why not? Yeah.
Right.
So then as time progressed and more things came online, like Alison, I heard you use the term tax efficient retirement. Like no normal person uses those words. So that's a more relatively recent. Well, it depends. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I consider myself
we're not normal
but
persons.
Yeah. So, point is like that, to be conscious about taxes in retirement, in my anecdotal experience, is a relatively new thing. And to use that term, like tax efficient retirement, obviously you came across that somewhere. Like what, how and when did taxes become, apparent to you that it was something to plan around?
That was just always part of the thinking. Where you got that?
Yeah. I mean, so around 2014, I think I found the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. And all these blogs were just flooding the internet. And I would have to say that, we came across a couple of blogs. One in particular was Tanya Hester's. What was the name of
Our Next Life?
Our Next Life. I ended up using those resources to kind of help me watch other people building their early retirement and to hear the things that they were talking about and start to apply it to us.
Okay.
Yeah. We were reading every single thing we could find online for sure.
Yeah.
Great. And there's a massive amount out there. Like everything you want to know is available. It's just synthesizing it and digesting it.
Yeah,
and we sort of found that stuff actually as we were getting ready to retire. That stuff is more of what we needed back in 2005, but just wasn't out there as far as we could tell.
Right. Now, this is sort of like an awkward question. It's hard to answer, but how would you rate or compare yourselves in terms of your knowledge about all this stuff now? I don't know if you want to benchmark it relative to others or just in general, but how confident and comfortable are you with your knowledge about taxes, finances in general, investments, et cetera?
Well, let's be awkward and say it's definitely high for me, and I would say it's very high for Allison. You know, I'm obsessive and she's incredibly thorough. So
Yeah.
we've been focused on all this money stuff regularly since 2005, and we have not lost interest in it at all. It's always changing. There's always more to learn.
Yeah. And you know, I mean, we can say that we feel like we have a high understanding, but you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And I can come across topics and show it to Ali and say, you do your research, I'll do my research, and then let's check with the CPA. And we've had several scenarios where the CPA said,
Wow, I don't know about
I don't know about that. Let me look into
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
So
Right. I think you get to a certain level of knowledge where at least you know enough that you know when there's something you might not know, right?
Yes.
So I think you can
Yes,
avoid
that's
like
true.
really major mistakes, and you know when you need to reach out and learn more versus people who know truly nothing. Like they can do some really damaging stuff just because they don't know.
right.
Yeah. Well, and we are not experts.
Not at
We are
all.
not experts. We are just very interested in learning.
Yeah.
It's great. And like you said, Allison, there's always going to be more to learn, even people in it as a business, myself included. I'll be the first to say, like, there's a never ending supply of things that are going to change that I don't yet know that
Oh yeah.
get tweaked over time. So,
And I mean, we come into retirement with a certain type of accounts. We don't
Yeah.
have pensions. We don't have annuities. We don't have, you know, these other things. We never had. I never had stock options at work. So there are things that we've never had the opportunity to use or utilize.
right.
So we have a very specific kind of slice of what our retirement planning is going to look like.
The maybe one other kind of in this at this point, I'm sure you can tell this is half of it is sort of for because we just enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not you know, we're not trying to test for
Right.
an exam or anything, but when we were blogging, we started doing, you know, money talks, not really financial coaching, but just talking to people about money. And Allison has been working on a spreadsheet that is pretty crazy and amazing since the very beginning. So, like she said, we had like one IRA each and one Roth each. We didn't have all the different things to learn about. So we started doing these money talks, and I think we had about 60 different spreadsheets that she adapted for other people. And so we could learn about their pensions and their totally different investment companies and different kinds of investment ideas. And it just is fascinating to learn. And even when it has nothing to do with us.
Yep.
Yeah. So you mentioned a blog. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, when we started traveling full time, one of our nieces and one of our friends who was blogging for a hobby said, "Don't be lame and just post a story on Facebook. You know, you have to have a blog." So I started a blog, and it was initially, you know, we're in Singapore for, you know, this is what's happening. And then random people started finding us and saying, "How did you do this?" And so we started writing money things, and then they start getting more complicated money posts. And then we started doing the kind of let's make friends and build community. So we started doing these money talks and building relationships with other bloggers. We just gave it our little family motto as a name, which I'm not sure if that was the right decision, but our family motto is all options considered.
Okay.
That's what we use to make all of our decisions together and to make sure we're both being heard. So we gave that name to the blog, and it sort of ran away a little bit, but that's just our family motto. And we stopped, you know, like a lot of hobby bloggers, because we are not interested in monetizing and making a business out of this. But like a lot of other friends we had, we felt done. In 2023, we felt done. And
Yeah.
so we're not really doing it anymore, but
Okay. Is it still around, just not updated since,
Yeah.
or do you, it is? Okay.
Yeah, the
what
blog is alloptionsconsidered.com, and it's still posted. And we had done an update maybe once or twice last year.
a couple last year.
Yeah.
And I noticed there was one in January of this year, which
Yeah.
that seems like it was longer
Yeah.
ago than that. So it's still a thing. We're still, you know, we still use it to make contact with other people who have similar things they want to talk about and make
Right.
friends with us. But we're not actively blogging, and we didn't run it very professionally. It's really a hobby blog to entertain ourselves and keep us busy for a while.
We did get a hard time from another blogger friend. Our blog posts tend to be really, really, really long.
That's just how our brains
with
are.
Lots of charts and pictures and graphs, and because that's the way my brain works. I want to see all of the answers to all my questions kind of graphically.
Yeah.
So I can see comparison really easy.
People kept saying, divide that into 6 posts and post every week. And we were like, no.
Nah. Right. Yeah. And I probably should have asked this first. Are you okay with me making this known to people and sharing a link to it?
I mean,
Sure.
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 Okay.
Why
All right,
not?
we'll do. So everyone listening and watching, you can find a link to it below. Okay. So now you've been in retirement a while. What are some things you wish you would have known or done differently? Looking back now, both sort of financial and non-financial? If any, or have you had it all figured out and it's been flawless?
Pre-retirement, wish that we had known.
There's lots of things.
We're scrolling down to that question because we spent.
I'd say for me, I think I absolutely for sure wish that I had known more about Roth IRAs while I was working. We didn't really get into Roths. She got into a Roth right before we retired, and I got into it right after we retired. So, Roths and HSAs were not part of our employment packages and things like that. So we didn't learn very much about them until afterwards. So I really wish that we had learned more about those types of accounts while we were working.
Yeah. And, I think pre-retirement stuff, everybody, I mean, depending on where you've grown up and the information that you've had, people think, well, okay, I'm just going to keep working until I retire, and then there'll be Social Security and maybe a 401k. But if you haven't kind of started your investment habit early and also invested in potentially a brokerage account or a traditional IRA or a Roth, then sometimes you may not have been putting enough in your 401k, and sometimes you may not have been working a high enough paying job that Social Security is really going to be enough. So I think I wish I had known earlier and started, investment habit earlier, when I didn't have the money to do it, just $25 a month.
Right.
I wish I'd been doing that and working on that.
But there's so much more to it than that. The standard advice that we got from our various employers was, you can have a 401k, even if it's a really terrible 401k, and you can just put 15% in there every month and you're good. I don't think that's good advice. I think that's too generic. And of course, there's no one money rule that applies perfectly to everybody in the same way. So I wish that we had known those kinds of things, like you retire at 65 no matter what, and you just invest 15% in your 401k no matter what. Those kinds of things. I sort of accepted that without knowing that I could choose something different.
Yeah.
Right.
And so
consequently, we have like a gentle death grip on all of our nieces and nephews. They're all starting their new jobs, graduating college. And we're like, okay, let's talk about what your employer plan is. Let's talk about what you're doing separately.
We don't really do money talks with random strangers anymore, but we love talking to family and friends about what we're all dealing with money. And
And do they generally appreciate it, or is it kind of in one ear out the other, or depends on the person?
There's a couple that are, one of our nieces very early was like, teach me how to do individual stocks. And we had a lot of fun with her. And now I think maybe 3 of them are really actively engaged with us and learning and working on all of their accounts. And, they need to choose for themselves. We're not trying to put it down anyone's throats, but it's very exciting for us when one of them is like, yes, let's talk about my new HSA.
Yeah, we have one niece who's starting a new job on Monday, and she says, okay, I want to go over the employer package with you on Saturday. Okay.
We're
Wow,
so
okay.
excited.
You're ready.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it really is important. You said that just start earlier, even if it's whatever you said, $15, $20 a week, a month, whatever the number was, frequency was.
Yeah.
Like the magic of compounding, especially if you're only early 20s and you got
Yep.
40 years for this to sit and bake.
Yep.
That's going to matter. Now it's hard to get that through. And I remember being 22, getting my first job. It's like every dollar counts that you take home, right? So
Yeah.
whether
Yeah.
you save or not, and if you do save, do you put it in the pre-tax account to save yourself some taxes? Well, not save, but defer yourself taxes.
Right.
Or Roth. And like I tell people now, if you can stomach it, put money away, put it in Roth. Yes, you take less home, but the future you is going to so appreciate it.
Yeah. And if you're going to retire before you're 59 and a half, having something in a brokerage account, and that's
Right.
what's
Yeah.
made it possible for us.
Yep.
That's a great point. You should, don't sleep on regular brokerage accounts. A lot of people get hung up on 401k, IRA, whatever, but there's so much flexibility
Yeah.
to a regular brokerage account.
Oh, yeah.
Truly.
And,
that's
you know,
an
no
important
contribution
part
limits,
of the puzzle.
Yeah. Don't need a job to contribute, to be able to contribute to one, et cetera. All right. So you mentioned the advisor path isn't for you. And just curious, do you foresee a scenario where it would be, and if so, what is that scenario? And I'm not pushing this to sell you on it. I'm just curious, like what your thought process is, and do you see potentially some point?
I mean, we don't need anybody to manage our money. We don't, we don't need to have an investment advisor. We're low cost ETFs. We have a maximum of 3 funds, and that's it across basically our 5 different accounts where we do have investments. We haven't,
Except for the new Berkby strategy, which we may or may not need to talk about. But we've just had a couple of ETFs, and that is what works for us.
yeah, and we have engaged a financial planner right before we retired to kind of vet our plan, and then more recently to kind of vet our plan now that we're in a place where we're kind of going to stay for a while. And we're also noticing that, eventually mom's going to pass away and there will be some funds coming from her. And in the spreadsheet that I've got, the modeling of it, we're all about controlling where and when our income is coming to us. We want to be able to turn the levers on and off so we can manage our taxes. And what we're seeing is if we're not careful with our RMDs and the Roth conversions and then some money that we might get from mom, all of a sudden our dividends are going to go crazy.
Like we set our income very intentionally, and it relates back to our ACA health coverage. So we want to set it, and we don't want it to just wildly change on its own.
Yeah.
And we've had a couple of years where we set it early in the year, and then the dividends are higher than we expected. So that has got us thinking about making an adjustment to the way our ETF portfolio works.
Yeah, and moving away from a portfolio that spins off more dividends than you really need or want based on the other things that you're trying to do.
We're just basically, I'll just say, we're just basically adding in one of probably our all-time favorite stock was Berkshire B for lots of reasons. My company that I was in was headquartered in Omaha, so Warren Buffett, but that is almost like an index in a way. It behaves currently very similar to our index funds, and it doesn't throw off dividends. So we're having fun slowly looking at adding a little bit of that back in and thinking about how that will perform.
But because we talk as much as we do about our portfolios and our plans, I wouldn't 100% say that we're completely interchangeable at this point, but if I go first, Ali's going to really know what's going on. And because we have such a simplified plan, I don't think there'll be any problem.
And I'm 10 years younger, so that is a reasonable outcome to plan for. So we have planned for it to the nth degree. And and our other backup too is if we successfully train up one of the nieces and nephews, they'll be able to step in and help. I right now help my mom with her portfolio. Yeah.
Okay.
So that would be our hopes.
They're going to have to want that and think that's entertaining in a way because we're not trying to assign duty to any of the kids.
Yeah. A few comments. One, this is not investing advice for anyone listening. We're not saying you should or should not buy Berkshire Hathaway or any other stock for that matter.
Thank you.
And two, I like what you said about advisors. You didn't directly say it, but I'm going to kind of put words in your mouth. Like, you sort of equate advisors with those who manage investments for people. And lots of people definitely do not need that. Investment management is like probably the easiest part of a good sort of financial advisory relationship. But the planning, like you did have someone check your stuff on a one-off here and there.
Yep.
I think a lot of people, that's all they really need, if even that, right? And that stuff's out there. And I'm not making this a pitch, so I don't want to give recommendations where to go. But just for those listening, financial advisors should be so much more than just someone who picks stocks and mutual funds for you. It's the other plans and kind of bigger comprehensive stuff.
Yeah.
And you made a comment earlier, Alison, how your tax efficient plan has been so different every year. And I think that's important for people to know. It might be frustrating for some. You two are very well versed in this, obviously, and very willing and capable of doing it. But some people don't have the interest or knowledge to figure out a tax optimized plan and play around with the numbers such that every year they're pulling different sources of money from different accounts and what have you.
Yeah.
They just want this kind of like set it and forget it thing, which is fine to want. But I see how it can be daunting for people to go into retirement and like not know where to start with. Where does my money come from? How do I pay taxes, et cetera?
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm going with that. I just thought it was worth mentioning that you brought that up earlier.
Well, I think actually I might have been listening to one of your previous podcasts, and somebody said something like, I don't want or need to work on my car. Mm-hmm. That's something I'm going to hire somebody to do. This is something that we actually enjoy and like to do. And,
our strategy it feels good to us, and we've done our homework, and the quality control part is super important. So, we put this whole strategy together. We tested our numbers 55 ways on our own, but we're not professionals. So we took that, gave it to a really good CFP, paid her for a few hours, and she threw all her tests at it and said,
good to go.
You're okay.
Good.
And then when our stuff changed, it just keeps changing. The economy keeps changing. Our dividends keep changing.
Our goals and our personal objectives,
how much we want to pay for health insurance keeps changing, all that stuff. So things had changed enough that I guess it was last year.
Yeah.
Last year we called her up again and said, here it is, have a look. And she said, okay, you're still good.
The other great thing about seeking out, one-off advice is you can always also ask the open-ended questions. What are we missing?
Yeah.
From what you're seeing, and you have to be, you have to give them all the information. You can't hold anything back, because if you hold something back, that's what's going to turn around and bite you.
Yeah.
So given all the information, what are we missing? And I was very happy to hear nothing. You've got it.
And I'll add one more thing. We are not, so we don't want an advisor. We feel capable of advising ourselves together. Yep. But we still every year decide to stay with a tax professional. So we have a CPA. Yeah. Ironically, Alison has caught a mistake that cost us money from the last 3 CPAs we've had, but they're not perfect. They don't know every single tax rule. The tax rules are always changing. So we still have a tax person because we have multiple tax returns, and we don't want to, I don't want to change my oil in my car. And I don't want to spend all my time filing all of our different tax returns and your mom's and my cousins. And so we get help for the things that we need help with.
Yeah.
Good. Now, it sounds like you're both, not it sounds like, but you are both heavily involved in the knowledge and the planning and the implementation of all the stuff you do. When one of you eventually predeceases the other, are you comfortable that the survivor can just fully pick up and run with whatever you have? And
we're obviously comfortable if Alison is the survivor, because she is the spreadsheet wizard, and her attention to detail is way beyond mine, way beyond mine. So we're comfortable with her handling it all on her own. And we do have to make sure everything is very well documented, because no matter how much we talk, I can't get inside that brain. Yeah. My brain is not the same as hers. So everything has to be documented.
Well, every month we have a bill worksheet, and we use Quicken to track stuff, and we've simplified where all of our accounts are. And we've developed a relationship with he's not an
It's like a customer service.
He's like a
person
customer
at Schwab.
service guy at Schwab
Okay.
that we can call up, and if we've got any questions, or we've, my mom just closed down an account, we wanted to, do some stuff.
We wanted to open the donor advised fund, all those things.
He will kind of handhold us and make sure that things are going through. So that, I think, is one of the most important things, is that either one of us, my sisters now call him, so he can help us all with particular questions.
And, we talk all the time. So we've been having these nerdy summits annually since we started that in 2016. Anyway, we started that at some point. So we have like this annual big nerd meeting. We can spread it over 3 days.
We did this year.
Talk about all the things. These are our goals. This is our strategy. This is our withdrawal amount. This is how much we're going to pay for health insurance. We go through all the stuff in this big nerd summit and have a great time setting the plan for the year. So, and now things are so complicated. We've done it twice in the last year.
Yeah.
So, things like that, we make sure we're discussing things. We make sure we're always on the same page. And it's sort of funny, but for a while I was insisting that we had to do everything together. We would pay the bills together. We would file the taxes together. We'd do our quarterlies. We do all this stuff like side by side together, but it became kind of ridiculous. So she is pushing all the buttons on the Roth conversions and all that stuff, but we are talking and talking and talking.
Yeah.
And what is definitely most important is just always being on the same page. It doesn't mean we agree from the beginning, but we have to get there before we can do anything.
And simplify.
Yeah, simplify.
That makes a huge difference.
Do you have a logo and T-shirts made up for the Big Nerd Summit? I'd buy one if you did.
We do.
Well,
Are you serious?
We don't have them to sell, but we have T-shirts and sweatshirts and hats, and we have stickers. We're those kind of nerds. That's not because we had a blog. That's because that's just
it's fun.
And it's actually called the Big Nerd Summit?
Well, it's we call it the Seabrook Summit because the first place that we took off for a long weekend was called Seabrook in Washington.
We were still working, and we lived in a 760 square foot condo. So we wanted like white Post-it pages all over the walls, and our condo couldn't accommodate that. So we went away for a long weekend and just set up this routine, like we're having like I'm hosting a strategy meeting at work.
Yeah. That's the other thing, is we were strategic planners in our jobs, basically. So we've carried that over to how we run our money.
That makes it fun.
If you ever do formally rebrand it Big Nerd Summit and make up merch, I'm definitely buying. So let me know.
Hey, I'm copywriting that right here, right now.
Do it. Yeah, you heard it here first, right? All right, some technical-ish things about your retirement planning. So you already mentioned you're both younger than 65, obviously. You said you're on ACA, Affordable Care Act insurance. Is that the plan, to carry that through to each of you who are of Medicare age?
Yes.
It is. Okay. And just curious, how's that working out? I know it's very different state by state with what plans are available, et cetera, but do you find it works?
We're in Arizona, which is not necessarily the friendliest state, but it's working out great. We're extremely happy with our ACA plans. We followed the advice initially of try to get it to zero cost, but that doesn't work with our
tax plans,
front loading tax planning and stuff like that. So we figure out what it's going to cost, what we're comfortable with, how we're going to budget for that. And we have done really well with the doctors and the specialists we need, and we're happy with the ACA plan.
Yeah. So we're on a bronze plan, and it's high deductible. So we have access to an HSA,
which we love.
And
never had those at work.
No. And we have, before I was 59 and a half, we used the QHFD, the Qualified Health Funding Distribution, for each of us.
Just help one time.
Yeah, to help fund the HSAs. And then pretty quickly I turned 59 and a half, 60, and we're withdrawing money from my IRA, basically tax-free, because we're contributing it directly into the HSAs.
Yep.
But for us right now, it's going okay. The thing that we're very aware of is that, when I get to Medicare age, the income level that you have to report and then the premiums that you have to pay basically stays the same when one of you then goes on to Medicare.
It's not suddenly 50%
Yeah, it's
off.
not 50%.
Yeah.
So our healthcare costs will go up
Yeah.
when we go on to Medicare.
Yeah. So that's a little frustrating, but
And obviously, I feel like it goes without saying, but obviously American healthcare is very expensive.
Yeah.
We all know that.
yeah.
So it's
Yes.
not like we love the numbers, we don't love the numbers, but we know how to do it and we're comfortable with what we've got.
And in our plan, we do inflate healthcare costs more than average inflation. So
Yeah.
I'm just curious, what do you use? I use typically 5%. I've heard anything from
yeah, we use 5% for the healthcare and 3% for general.
everything else. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, Ali, you mentioned you were managing income or, not getting your ACA premiums to zero, but without giving specific numbers, obviously, how do you balance I want to keep my income low to get the maximum ACA premium subsidies versus we need to get ahead of our eventual taxes by doing Roth conversions or whatever? Can you just sort of speak to how you found that mix that you feel is right for you?
We basically, we started running, the first thing we started doing was sort of running, I opened an account for us on the healthcare.gov site years before, while we were traveling full time and using international health insurance. And so we would just start running the numbers with different portfolio amounts, and that taught us
Different income amounts. Yeah.
Yeah, different income amounts. So that taught us kind of what would a Roth conversion do to tip it? What would this level of income versus that level of income look like? And we were using the brokerage account exclusively at the time. So that just made things simpler. And now that we're tapping into her IRA and her Roth, because she's over 60.
Not the Roth.
Well, we have
Just IRA.
access to it.
Yeah, we do have access to it.
We're still running all these simulations within the actual, not just on third-party sites, but to really go in there and put the different dollar amounts that are your actual dollar amounts or your assumed and projected, and to just kind of find the sweet spot that feels comfortable for you that's the generic way that we started trying to figure that out.
Yeah, and initially we were worried about the 4 times poverty rate for the ACA. So that's what we were targeting for our taxable income.
Yeah.
And since we do live off of our brokerage account, we do have a lot of cost basis on what we're pulling out. So we're using cost basis, capital gains, dividends, and then we have very little ordinary income except for Roth conversions.
But the Roth conversions, they really show up within the ACA system. They really show up in there. So you can't just ignore that, which is something we had to figure out by just practicing it, doing it.
She will massage the numbers on the ACA, and I've built a spreadsheet that takes in all the different types of income types, including the cost basis, including the type of Roth conversion we want to do. And we basically say, okay, how much taxes are we willing to spend for the size of ACA premium?
And for filing taxes and understanding income and cost basis, there's actually a different calculation. Her spreadsheet's doing one thing, and my healthcare spreadsheet is set up more like the ACA, which is not the same. So we just go back and forth, and
Yeah. Now it's possible that the ACA cliff will come back.
I have to assume it's going to come back soon.
But we feel okay with I think it's 8.5% of your income ends up being your premium amount.
So we just use that.
We just use that, and we're like, okay, as long as we know what the number is and we can play within the 12% tax bracket and watch how prepaying taxes on the Roth conversion helps us in the long term. It is interesting that our expenses have gone up, and one of the reasons why is because we are more willing to pay more taxes right now, a little bit more in ACA premium, to make larger Roth conversions.
That was the big change, is just, you get into that thought that you have to be ultra frugal and you have to keep your taxes at zero, because that's sort of some standard advice out there. And then we looked at that and decided not to do that. So we started making these adjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sure there's lots of people listening in similar situations where it is a tough balancing act between keeping income intentionally low to maximize premium credits you get on ACA versus if you have sizable pre-tax accounts like IRAs, you're going to pay tax eventually. So
Absolutely.
how much you pay now, it's hard.
And you can get on these lower cost healthcare plans, but you're going to have a very high deductible.
Yeah.
And you can't always predict some of the things that are going to happen. So that's the other thing in the equation. You have to have that deductible sitting aside.
Yeah.
In 2022, I had to have rotator cuff surgery.
We didn't plan for that and schedule that. That just happened.
So there goes our deductible, and thank goodness we had that sitting aside just in case.
Right. No, that's great words of wisdom. And you're not going to know until well after the fact what was ultimately the right decision of
Correct.
Yeah.
getting credits, right? You just sort of
Correct.
know the angles, know how and when this could be a good scenario or not. Pick something, say you're okay with it, and run with it, because otherwise you're going to second guess yourself to death trying to rethink and
Yeah.
And I'll add that in this, what is it, the big money nerd summit every year, the first thing we have to do is review everything from last year. How did it really go with our different emergency funds and our income and our ACA and all of this stuff? How did it actually go? What adjustments do we need to make going forward?
Yep.
Yeah. Great. Social Security, what's your plans for that? Especially with approximately 10 years age difference. That's a sort of, a little bit of a twist to the scenario.
We've run little simulations on all of the different age options for each of us at our 10-year age difference. And we talked about using it early at some point. Now we're talking about 70.
Yeah, we earned pretty similar. I mean, we've gone in and we both have the right amount of quarters or whatever, the right amount of points to qualify for it. And we've used the Social Security website, stopping work when we stop to calculate it. I even calculated it on a separate spreadsheet, found one that helped me do that. So at this point, we're looking at both of us taking it each at 70. It doesn't really make sense for one of us to take it early per se. The only reason I think at this point we would take it early is if we use it as a hedge against sequence of return risk for one of us. And we're not seeing that as something that's going to be an issue for us at this point.
It doesn't seem like the right move anymore. So we're back to the 70 idea.
Yeah.
And by that, you mean if markets do get nasty and you're both of claiming age, so markets get nasty, you mean start Social Security then for one of you instead of continuing to delay and pull from your portfolio?
Correct. And that would, keep us from pulling from the portfolio during that time.
Okay. Yeah. Makes sense. Roth conversions, we already talked about. I mean, that's a question I ask everyone, but you both sort of hit on it multiple ways. Anything else you wanted to add about strategy for conversions? Or I guess maybe let me ask you this. Do you have a target in mind, how much you want to convert to either get your Roths to or get your traditional IRAs down to?
We just, when we first retired, we were trying to hit ours both really hard. And then we kept kind of doing all these different simulations. And we noticed that because I'm so much younger, it just made more sense because we'll be able to access hers.
I mean, we access it now.
We access it now, but not mine. So we're focusing on as big of Roth conversions as we are comfortable with. And, I don't want to give an actual number because I don't want anyone to just think that's a number to copy, but
it doesn't push us. We stay under the 12% tax bracket.
We try to stay in that
incomes
with those limits and push that as high as we can and let our healthcare costs go up with that so that we can prioritize that.
Yeah. And the goal is to convert all of her IRA into a Roth and then chip away at using my IRA for things like the HSA and anything else, but play with it each year. And through chipping away at mine and converting all of hers, we should get both of the IRAs empty and everything over to the Roths. And there was one other thing I was going to say. It was going to be brilliant. I forgot it already.
Well, I know that the Roth conversions feel pretty critical because we're so focused on tax planning for the future. Right. And so it just became immediately obvious that we would be in so much trouble by letting my IRA just cook for that long. Yeah. But the kind of unexpected bonus of traveling full time for 3 years or so was not being on the ACA, not having all the other things
Income
we needed to
restrictions.
deal with. So we just could power through some rather substantial Roth conversions, especially for me, but just for those few years. So now it's just more of a balancing act, and it changes a little bit every year based on all the other things.
But the brilliant thing I was going to say was
Good.
we are starting to look at holding our bond, slower growing holdings in the IRAs.
It was
to
becoming
keep that,
clear that our
so-
bonds in the brokerage account it felt ridiculous. It felt like not useful. So they work really well in these other accounts, and they're not in my accounts yet.
Got it.
Yeah, they're not in the Roths. Yeah, but they're in the IRAs now.
So
Definitely
you
not
have,
in my.
the stuff that ideally will grow the most over the long term in the Roths. So all that growth will be tax free.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Home, we already touched on this. So you have your house in Prescott that you, what's the term you use? Home share or compounding or?
We've called it all the things. We've called it the compound,
compound.
co-living situation.
Co-living,
It's
okay.
essentially a duplex with, a duplex sitting together on one property with two separate yards.
Yeah.
And longer term, any plans what to do with it, or for a foreseeable future, you're going to be staying there with your co-living person?
We will be living in this house full time or in this area full time. We will own this house for the rest of our housemate's life, no matter what. We will live in this house, I think, all the way for as long as her mother is alive, though we may want to get closer still. We're still an hour and a half away.
Yep.
But this house is our long-term care plan, if we could say it that way.
Yeah.
We didn't want or need that insurance because it doesn't work for everything. So we're self-funding for long-term care, and this house has become the buy-in.
Yeah.
Allison's mom is in a rather fabulous life care facility that she jokes and calls it front door to back door service. So no matter what happens to her, they have everything. They have all the assisted living and memory care and everything there. And it's a nonprofit. So we've been saying for years that's looking really good. I think lately we're saying the heat. I don't know that we could actually move into that exact place, but we are always hunting. That's another research topic for us. Is there anything else like that anywhere that is a nonprofit that has all of these different capabilities for your actual care, but also has all the fun, creative stuff and activities and the food and the restaurants? So if you have any ideas, let us know.
I don't know. That's something I'm trying to think more about, learn more about. It does sound increasingly appealing to folks. Continuing care retirement community is sort of the common name given to that. Yeah, where there's different forms of living through all stages of life, from completely independent to some dependence to nursing home to full blown, almost like hospital type environment. And I think even hospice. And
They do.
Yep.
Her facility has hospice.
Has all of it. And we've gone into the marketing team 3 times, I think, to get the numbers, because they adjust over time, and we keep running those, and that sits in our actual plan. I don't know how realistic that is for us, but it's what we're thinking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, they sound great. They're not cheap, and rightfully so. And some of them have hundreds of thousands of dollars of buy-in with monthly ongoing fees beyond it. So
correct.
It could be a struggle for a lot of folks, but there's something to it nonetheless. So,
We don't want to live independently in our home and have someone needing to accommodate us in an environment that's not built for that. And we have to have the memory care option because Alzheimer's runs in my family.
Okay.
So that sort of setting it seems like the ideal one for us. So we are just preparing for the buy-in and looking for places that would meet that need.
Yeah.
Yeah. The home you have now, do you own that outright, or is there a mortgage against it? You do? Okay.
Yes.
And this is part of your rolled over money from when you sold the house pre-travel?
Correct.
Yeah. We just set that in a money market and said, that is our budget. We can't go over that. And we didn't have a very hard time in this. Seattle, our 760 square foot condo cost more in 2018 than this big duplex last year.
Yeah.
So we were able to stick with that, which is is very lucky. We were very lucky and fortunate to be able to do that.
Good. Now, the next question, there's a lot of ways you can go. We already sort of got into it, but I should really break this down into separate pieces. In terms of your investments, you mentioned you're a few funds, the ETF type indexing, that's all you do. Can you just talk more about, do you do bucketing, any particular distribution strategy or approach, or other things you keep in mind with taking money out besides managing it to stay within 12% tax bracket?
So we have a broad market ETF and an international ETF, and we did have bond ETFs.
Now you say did that change?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. We had to make some other money moves recently, and
They weren't really doing what we wanted them to do.
and they had losses, so we were able to
Rearrange.
offset some gains for those losses. So and now we've switched those over to the IRAs.
Okay.
So basically, after our big nerd summit at the beginning of the year, or at the very end of the year, we decide what all of our money moves are going to be, how much money we need for the year, where it's going to come from, and it always is coming out of the brokerage account right now. This year, we've added money coming out of the IRA specifically to fund the HSAs. And then we have a 2 years in cash in a money market.
Okay.
So we basically reevaluate and make the plan for the year, sell the equities, refill the little buckets that we have. And I don't necessarily want to call them a bucket strategy, but refill the emergency fund if we needed it.
Yeah.
We refill our this year's living fund, knowing that we're going to be getting dividends as well throughout the year. So at this point, it's basically selling equities and targeting the monies that where they're going to go and the conversions.
We just do that in January. We just use our Schwab checking and savings accounts.
Yep.
Once we pull that money and filter it that way.
Yeah. And
it's pretty simple.
We don't manage our money so intensely that we're like, oh, there's a new CD over here, I'm going to go get 0.5% for 6 months.
Yeah.
We do not, in our original personal money statement, which is kind of our objectives for investing that we've put together, it says very clearly in there that we are not going to go after, super high returns. We want to go for consistent, predictable, manageable, understandable investments and strategies.
Things that we know how they're going to function. We know how they operate. And that's why ETFs specifically, not mutual funds or anything else.
Yeah, because we don't get surprised with distributions or capital gains that get flowed through.
We did have a ladder of CDs in our first, in our first just 1 year of traveling, but they did so well that they dumped early. So that's when we said, okay.
Yeah, the interest rates were high.
And they were doing great.
And the institution called them.
I think I called. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, well, that's no fun.
We're not doing those kinds of things.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And you foresee this being the plan going forward? Eventually, you'll have Social Security turned on, but otherwise, you're going to wash, rinse, repeat the same big nerd summit and personal, map out.
It's been working for 6 years for us. So
it was just brokerage account. Then she reaches the age where we can tap into the next things. And then I will reach the thing and we'll tap into the next thing.
And we're never going to touch those Roths. We're just going to keep converting into them, and they'll be there. They'll be there in a year that we might want to use them.
We will
to reduce our taxes.
Elderly.
Yeah.
It's not that we'll never touch them, but not anytime soon.
Okay. Because they're so tax favored. Let them bake,
Yeah.
All right. So now that you two are in retirement, have been for a handful of years, how did you find the process and transitioning of going from work, which I assume was full time? I don't know, but from working to not. And you might be a little different because you kind of went right into travel from there. But any sort of comments or things you can share about that transition process?
It was. I will say we know from all the money talks we've had that that is very complicated for a lot of people emotionally and in lots of different ways. It was not for us. We were,
Okay,
we are hardcore people, whatever we're doing, we are overdoing, we are overdoing everything we are doing. So when we were working, we were like 60 hours a week, all day, nights and weekends. We'd say, oh, we'll have to think about healthcare and fitness later, I guess. You know, we just were. So when we set our date and we pulled the plug, we just, we're happy to be done with that. That was not hard. And so we occupy our time with the things we care about, the things we value, the people in our lives, all this learning, and that's what travel is. Travel is learning also.
I think it was really nice to move from these full-time jobs to retirement planning and travel planning. We already had something going, and we already had things that we were interested in doing. And then by the time we couldn't travel full time anymore, and we had to go to COVID, because of COVID, we already had our next plan kind of in the works, which was having this housemate move out, buying a piece of property. I love to tinker on a house.
You guys have a thing in common, and that's woodworking. You both love to do that. Cool. So we have an infinite number of things we would like to be doing that give us joy and that make us feel like we're contributing. So we have not struggled with that. And we just are absolutely thrilled and grateful to have control over our time and energy. It's a gift.
That's great. So you were very intentional about it. You clearly thought it through. You're both planners by nature and by careers. So I think that's what made the transition, I'm assuming made the transition work well for you. Other folks, that's not the case, right? They just retire, stop, wake up the next day. It's like, now what do I do?
And I think you also just have to be really clear about this one reality thing. And that is, life is just life. Whatever you struggle with in your job, in your life, it doesn't just go away. The things that you're dealing with in your life are still there after you retire. And so you have more time to deal with those things, whatever they are for you. And so I think it's important to think about that and to know that and to pay attention to what you value and how you want to spend your time and do that. And know it will keep changing, because everything keeps changing.
The one thing constant is change, right?
Correct.
I don't know who said that, but it sounds good.
They were brilliant, whoever they were.
I'm sure. Expenses. What's been more expensive than you thought? And what's been less, if anything, expensive than you thought it would be?
Inflation over the last couple of years has been really tough, because when we bought our house in Flagstaff, we added an auxiliary dwelling for our housemate.
Okay.
And we started out with a budget for it, and we went way over the budget for lots of reasons, because we were still on the tail end of COVID.
So we just adjusted.
But that was hard. That was hard. And we do stuff with my mom a lot. So that can be things that crop up. There's surprise things that you can't kind of plan for. We started our retirement in traveling in 2019, and we pretty quickly found this conference that we really wanted to go to, and it wasn't in the budget.
And she was like, I don't know. And I said, oh, I know. We're going.
So, that was another $3,500 that we weren't planning for. We're starting to go to more concerts and more sporting events. And Ali just had her 50th birthday, so we took ourselves down to Puerto Vallarta for 10 days. And
stare at the Pacific Ocean. We live in the desert now.
Right.
So nothing is less expensive than we thought it was going to be, except just like out of sheer luck, we picked this house that is a 2-story duplex, and it is basically 100% 1973 original. I love the daisy wallpaper.
Yeah, the daisy wallpaper.
In my playroom.
And do you have the avocado green refrigerator?
We have the yellow.
So you
I
have the
forget what they call the yellow. We have everything.
One of the bathrooms is avocado.
Yeah, but the owners did one thing to upgrade this house, which is to put a pretty substantial solar panel set on the roof. So here we are in this expensive place running essentially, we run 2 big HVACs and we don't really pay for electricity costs because of that solar system. We would not have been willing to purchase that.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh, we just lucked out in that one way. So we have one good thing that costs less, and that's electricity.
Yeah.
It's almost
good.
free.
Yeah. I have relatives in Arizona who bought a handful of years ago. It was almost $30,000, I want to say, for solar, but it fully pays for their electricity bills, which there's a long break-even period on that. But I guess if you're stepping into it, now I guess you can argue you paid for it by buying the house and the cost of that solar was in there, but still.
Yeah, we got lucky on this house.
So lucky.
The wife was like, "I'm done with this house. The only way I could stay here is if I did a whole bunch of remodel."
And I won't.
So we're leaving. Yeah. And so they priced it to move, and we just got lucky and found it.
That's great.
It's the last deal we'll ever get, I think.
Yeah,
Right. I have a personal inflation story that really bugs me, and I'm sure lots of people everyone has stories, but I don't eat McDonald's much. But I went the other day. So I graduated high school in 96. And me and my friends used to just drive around at night with nothing to do. We'd like throw donuts at people and go to McDonald's most nights. And it was $2.99 for a Big Mac meal. Now that wasn't supersized, but still it's $2.99. It's now $11 or 11 something plus tax. And I did the math and I'm like, that's more inflation than higher education cost, than healthcare has been. So I'm like insulted. Now granted, I'm the big dummy because I still got it, but it's like, after tax, I paid almost $13 or something for a Big Mac meal. I'm like, well, what just happened in the last 30 years? But
grievances
for McDonald's, right? Yeah. Anyway, I don't know why that bothered me so much, but it did.
It makes me want to talk about. Remember when gas cost less than $1 a gallon? That makes me feel old, but gas used to cost less than $1 a gallon for me.
Yeah.
Yep. It was bumping around like $1.25, a little over $1. When I started driving in whatever it was mid 90s. And I remember in high school, like some friends saying, yeah, this place, I found it for 95 cents there. And now it's, I can't even imagine that, right? And I guess it's all relative. Like my parents would say it was whatever, $0.25 a gallon when they were driving when they were kids. But
I bought my house for $20,000.
Right.
That sounds nice. That sounds real nice.
Yeah.
But I think it's cool, like certain technology, TVs, computers, like, my parents paid whatever, $800 for a TV back in 1984, that now a TV that's like 30 times better would be $200. Like, so some things have gotten cheaper over time, but.
Good point. Yes, good point.
There's a silver lining to all clouds, right? All right. What did you think would be more difficult or challenging about retirement than it actually is, if anything?
One of the things that we worried about was, particularly since we were selling our place and leaving the town that we had just spent the last 20 years in, we were worried about having friends, keeping friends, making new friends. And we really, made an effort to figure out how to talk to anybody and everybody.
Well, one person said to us, family member said to us, "You're going to retire early. You will have no friends." And we thought, oh, that's not true. So we decided you just strike up a conversation everywhere you go and make an effort. And once we learned how to make an effort, get out of that introvert thing in that one way, it became normal. It feels normal now. Just chat with everybody. And
we chat with everybody. And consequently, we're making old friends, people who are a lot older than us, people that are a lot younger than us. We're making friends all over the place.
A real estate agent, the woman at the restaurant, whatever, the woman at the bookstore. You just keep talking to people and you find them. They're out there.
Yeah. But you do have to be intentional, right? You said like it doesn't just magically happen. You have to put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And I mean, it can be super easy and casual. If I'm standing next to somebody for 30 seconds, I've already started chatting with them. Not in an invasive way, but,
not all the time, at least.
In a nice way.
We would take a cooking class in every city we visited.
Yeah.
And sure enough, we still have a friend, I think, from every cooking class we've ever been in. We still have friends that were the homeowners in our different pet sitting places, because they would say, we would pick each other because we liked each other and we wanted to get to know each other. And so that would turn into friendships. We just made it part of our routine. And now it actually feels pretty easy. It didn't feel easy at all when I was working. I feel like I did not know how to do that.
Yeah.
But now I do. Practice.
And I guess while you were working, friends probably, or it just sort of organically happened from being around people so much, right? Now you have to put the work in and try to make friends, not to let people, But that's my concern as well. Is like I'm super social, and that's what I've struggled with in leaving the corporate world in 2019 to start my business, because it's just me sitting alone by myself in an office. And that's hard. I didn't realize how social I was and how much I appreciated network and just being around people.
Yeah.
So I do have to try now, and it is a little weird at times because other people still have their corporate jobs and whatever, and my kids are getting older, so there's less kind of common affinity between parents of kids' activities, and so I can see the writing on the wall. How like I'm gonna have to work to keep and make friends, right? Which sounds weird to say, but it's the reality. So
that's a good job to have. Working on relationships.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's a good one to put in place in your routine.
It's what fills my bucket, having friends, being social. So not everyone's like that. Some people, I guess, may truly enjoy just sitting home, reading books and whatever, but
we do that, but we also, we are those people, but we also really need connection and relationships. So we work at it.
Good. That's important. So I'm sure you've gotten lots of advice, words of wisdom from your groups, just from other people or whatever, but in your travels, in your planning, what's the worst or most inaccurate advice or guidance you were given about retirement?
That it's hard to figure out on your own.
Yeah.
I think we're really lucky at this point in time for people who have access to the internet. There's so much free information out there. So we were told it would be hard to make it happen. We were told it would be impossible because we did not have high incomes.
Yeah.
So those kinds of things where, the people who were working in money would kind of, that's not something for the lay person to do, that kind of attitude. Yeah. So it took a while to grow that confidence.
Yeah. And the other surprising thing that I think was helpful for us was understanding that there's more than one way to figure this out. You don't have to just stick with one thing, or if you start with one thing, you can take that and follow it into something else, or, use it to apply to yourself the way it's more comfortable for you.
I feel like I don't want to pick on the 4% rule, but also I do want to pick on the 4% rule. Everybody does that now, but the 4% rule has only one flaw. It's not a rule. It wasn't intended as a rule. The Trinity study is cool. We thought that was fascinating to read and to learn about, and to take what became a 4% rule for some people and just like, okay, that's a baseline study concept. Yeah. Let's tweak it and find out where in the threes are we happy, and
however,
that sort of thing.
If we didn't know about the 4% rule or guideline, we wouldn't have known how to calculate how much we were going to need.
It gave us a baseline.
It gave us a baseline. And then based on our comfort levels, we altered it. But it really was an eye opener for us.
Yeah. So I guess that would be a big one for us.
I was going to say it took me 2 years to run that calculation. It's the most simple calculation in the whole world, but it took me 2 years to have the confidence to run it. And when I ran it, I was like, oh my gosh, we can retire right now.
Because we had to adapt it to be not that exact rule, but something that would actually feel safe.
Yeah.
And would actually meet what we were trying to accomplish with the money that we had, which is not the money that someone else has. We're all different.
Yeah.
So you got it to work in some derivation of it that would work practically for what you needed to do.
Yeah. I think all those concepts out there, like all the different numbers that people say, it's this, it has to be this. Then you go, and you learn how to adapt that for your actual selves.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think those sort of rules of thumb, and I agree, 4% rule is definitely not a rule. I don't like that the industry has since called it that, but you can use it at different points of triangulation and sort of like sanity checks to whatever other methods you're using. And if they all sort of jive and agree, then cool. But do not rely on any single one of those as the written in stone, this is what you should be doing.
Right.
Yeah, it's grateful. We're grateful that that showed up in our research as soon as it did, because we were not 100% figuring out this is our dollar amount and it sits on this exact date.
Yeah.
That's not how we do things. Right. So we're happy we came across it and adapted all of that different information for ourselves.
Okay, good. Now, very general question wrapping up here. We may have already hit on it indirectly through something else, but what did you find most surprising about retiring, both with regards to financial things and non-financial things?
For me, the most surprising thing was how busy I was going to feel.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know, I mean, right now, I am very busy. Particularly, you know, my mom comes up with these crazy ideas of things she wants to do.
The sheep project.
Yeah. There's a project that sheep. Yeah. So
go ahead.
They're putting on a big sheep event for a week in September, and they wanted to build these 3-dimensional sheep out of plywood. And the woodshop guys didn't have time to help her. So I helped her because she helped me on all the things I did in school when I was a kid. So all the projects I wanted to do on the house got put aside to make 6 of these cutout sheep. I'm just super busy.
Yeah.
Making sheep. Okay. Yeah, someone I met like a year ago or so, this woman, Veronica, I forget her last name, but she retired from a federal job. And what you said about the sheep reminded me of this. So she retired. Most of her friends were still working. Her family was working. And because she was retired, everyone assumed, oh, she has time. So everyone kept asking her to do things, and she kept saying yes and yes and yes, and realized eventually she wasn't controlling her retirement. She was doing a lot, spending a lot of hours for other people. Yep. And she eventually said, no, I need to put some limits around this. And she ultimately wrote a book, like a workbook to help people step through and do little like checklists and worksheets or whatever. I think it was called like My Retirement, My Way or something. And it was about that, like, you own your time, you control, you set boundaries. Here's schematics and processes to help you think through what's important, how to set boundaries, et cetera. Yep. I'm not saying you shouldn't be doing the sheep project, but like just, food for thought. You can easily spend time on other people if you let yourself,
Yeah.
That's kind of what the blog turned into. It was 100% just, we learned a few things that helped us, and wow, we wished that we had been able to just like find that information when we really needed it in the beginning.
Yep.
It wasn't out there. We couldn't find it. So we thought, okay, we will share it on our little hobby blog. And then like 2 years later, we were doing 3-hour money chats, 5 or 6 days a week. And she was building spreadsheets for 60 different couples or individuals.
Not all at once.
One at a time. And it just kept escalating until we were exhausted. Our nights and weekends were that again. And I thought, I feel like we're running a business, and we said we're not going to do that. So we had to just kind of let that all go. And that was really interesting. Things do just sort of come at you, and we pick up what's thrown at us sometimes and we enjoyed that so much, but it got to feel like we were overdoing it.
Yeah.
So those things do happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the surprise probably.
Okay, good. And finally, if you can give only one piece of advice or guidance to others about retirement planning, what would it be?
Do it your way.
Yeah, do it your way. And the other thing is, in the process of doing it your way and finding your way, like get 3-4 resources for every question. And inevitably, when you're asking that question, you get those resources, you're going to come up with another question that's going to take you down another rabbit hole. It might be a good rabbit hole or not. But just don't assume that the first answer to your question is appropriate for you.
And also, don't get stuck on your mistakes. We've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes. I had all the student loan debt and all that. Not that was a mistake. That was the only way I could do it. But
yeah. We had 2 rental houses that we weren't renting at market rate, and those were mistakes.
I thought that was the way. That was, we're going to be landlords, and rental houses will make us rich, and then we'll be able to retire early. That didn't work for us, because turns out turning 2 personal homes into rental properties and intentionally keeping them way below market rate, that will not help you retire. We had to learn that.
Yeah.
Because we just were having fun doing the things that seemed fun. So you can't get stuck on your mistakes, especially your money mistakes.
Yeah.
You just learn,
move on. And then the last thing is, when you are making money moves, you don't have to do it in a rush. You know, if there's something wacky going on with the market, you don't have to, buy and sell and get out of something quickly. Avoid being impulsive. Make your plan, make your decisions, make a timeline for them, and follow through.
Don't delay, but don't be impulsive.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Just
so
thoughtful,
there you
pragmatic.
go. There's 3.
That's like 5.
I asked for one. I'm cutting 2 of these out. Yeah, no, just kidding. No, these were all well worth mentioning. So thank you for that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
Well, this was great. Thank you both. This was very interesting, especially the travel angle. That's a sort of new twist that listeners haven't heard yet here. So thank you for sharing that with everyone.
Oh, great. Good.
And I'm sure a lot of people will benefit from this and find it very fascinating. So thank you.
Well, we've both found all of your podcasts very helpful, and we enjoy the Facebook group and your blogs and your emails. We're finding you to be one of our go-to resources in retirement. So thank you.
We're not really following the other stuff we were interested in. So thank you for what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate the kind words. And I just got to be careful, like we're talking about, not let it consume me because it can. As long as I still enjoy it and have the time for it, I'll continue doing this. So
good.
Thank you for that.
Good.
Yeah.
All right. Well, great. Thank you both. I appreciate it very much.
Great.
It's great to meet you.
Bye-bye.
Likewise. Thank you.